You know what I find absolutely hilarious about humans? The Zekthari diplomats' mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among their species. They're the only beings I've ever encountered who apologize for winning a war. Ambassador Chen raised an eyebrow, her weathered features remaining carefully neutral as she sipped her tea. The iridescent diplomats sitting across from her continued to click and chirp, apparently quite pleased with their observation. I mean, really, they continued. What other species sends aid packages to the worlds they just conquered? Sets up hospitals? Rebuilds infrastructure? It's absurd. Perhaps, Chen replied, setting down her cup with deliberate precision. You're misunderstanding our motivations. The Zekthari's antennae twitched. Oh, do enlighten me, Ambassador. What possible strategic advantage could there be in wasting resources on a defeated enemy? Chen smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Tell me, Ambassador Tekazir, have you ever heard the human expression, sleeping dogs? I'm not familiar with this dog creature, but please continue. It's an earth animal, a predator we domesticated thousands of years ago. The saying goes, let sleeping dogs lie. It means don't disturb something that could cause you trouble. The alien diplomat's compound eyes sparkled with something between amusement and condescension. And this relates to your peculiar post-war behavior. How exactly? Chen leaned forward slightly. Did you know that humans are one of the few species that actively tries to avoid war? Not out of cowardice, mind you. We're quite good at it when pushed. No, we avoid it because we know exactly what we're capable of becoming. Becoming? Tikazir's mandibles clicked in confusion. What do you mean, becoming? You see, Ambassador, most species go to war because they want something. Territory, resources, political power. Humans? We go to war because we have to. Because someone pushed us too far. And when that happens... Chen's voice trailed off as she gazed out the window of the diplomatic station, watching the stars wheel slowly past. When that happens? Tikazir prompted, suddenly less certain of their position in this conversation. When that happens, we stop being the civilization that gave the galaxy faster-than-light travel, zero-point energy, and universal translators. We become something else. Something older. Something that remembers what it was like to be the apex predator of a death world. The Zikathari diplomat's antennae went still. You're being melodramatic, surely. Chen smiled again, and this time it did reach her eyes, though Tekzir found they rather wished it hadn't. Tell me, Ambassador, have you studied the Krikstal conflict? Of course. The Krikstal Empire attempted to annex 3 human colony worlds. You responded with overwhelming force, as any species would. And do you know why we responded with overwhelming force, as you put it? I assumed it was to demonstrate military superiority. Chen shook her head. No, we responded that way because they killed children. Specifically, they bombed a school. One school on one colony. 342 children died. A regrettable casualty count, but hardly... We glassed 17 Krikstal worlds in response. Chen's voice was soft, almost gentle. Not their military installations, not their shipyards, their colony worlds, civilian populations. We turned 17 planets into radioactive slag because they killed 342 of our children. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Tkazir's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of growing distress. That seems disproportionate. It was absolutely disproportionate. It was monstrous. It was genocide. Chen picked up her tea again. And that's exactly why we send aid packages after we win a war. Why we rebuild what we destroy. Why we help our enemies back to their feet. I don't understand. We do it to remind ourselves that we're not monsters. That we can be better than our worst impulses. That we don't have to be the species capable of turning 17 worlds to glass over 300 deaths. Chen's voice hardened. But mostly, Ambassador, we do it to remind everyone else that we choose not to be monsters. That every time we help rebuild, every time we show mercy, it's not because we have to, it's because we want to. The Zekthari diplomats sat in silence for several long moments, processing this information. Finally they spoke, their voice unusually subdued. And the aid packages to the Krikstal survivors? Were the largest in human history. Chen finished her tea. We rebuilt every world we destroyed, helped their species recover. It took 50 years and cost us trillions of credits. Because you felt guilty? Because we needed them to understand something very important. Chen stood, smoothing her diplomatic uniform. We needed them to understand that the species capable of helping them rebuild 17 worlds was the same one capable of destroying them in the first place. That every act of mercy is also a reminder of what we could do instead. Tekzir's antennae drooped slightly. That's rather terrifying, Ambassador. Good. Chen's smile was warm now, genuine. Because the other reason we avoid war, Ambassador Tekzir, is that we've learned something over our long and bloody history. The only thing worse than facing humans in battle is making them your enemy. Is that a threat, Ambassador? Not at all. It's a history lesson, one that I hope your people never need to learn firsthand. Chen gathered her things. Now shall we discuss the trade agreement? I believe you had some concerns about the proposed tariff rates. The Zekthari diplomat found themselves nodding perhaps a bit too quickly, their earlier amusement completely forgotten. As they followed the human ambassador out of the room, they couldn't help but notice that the security forces in the corridor, both human and alien, gave Chen a slightly wider berth than strictly necessary. It wasn't until much later, after reviewing the day's meeting notes, that Tekzir realized something that made their carapace tingle unpleasantly. At no point had Ambassador Chen actually denied their initial observation about humans apologizing for winning wars. She had simply explained why they made sure to do it so very, very thoroughly. 3 cycles later, Ambassador Tekzir found themselves in a rather different meeting. The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called following reports of a new aggressive species emerging from the previously unexplored Orion Spur. The Mrith, as they called themselves, had already conquered 2 minor civilizations and showed no signs of stopping. Their methodical, General Kovacs of the Centaurian Defense Force reported, his holographic form flickering slightly. No waste, no hesitation. They take what they want and move on to the next target. The council chamber erupted in overlapping voices, each species contributing to the growing cacophony of concern. Tekzir noticed that Ambassador Chen, seated in the human delegations section, hadn't said a word. She was reading something on her datapad, occasionally making notes, seemingly disconnected from the panic around her. The Mrith have already rejected diplomatic overtures, another counselor announced. They view conversation as weakness. Then we must show strength, came the predictable response. With what fleet? The combined forces of the affected sector couldn't stop their advance. Tekzir watched as Chen finally set down her datapad and raised her hand. The council chairman, a Valaxian with impressively iridescent scales, nodded in her direction. The human delegation has the floor. Thank you, Chairman. Chen's voice was calm, almost serene. I've just finished reviewing the tactical data from the Mrith encounters. I have a question for the council, if I may. Proceed, Ambassador. Has anyone bothered to tell the Mrith about the Krixtal? The chamber went silent. Tekzir felt their antennae curl involuntarily. I don't believe that particular historical event has come up in the limited communications we've had with them, the chairman admitted. Chen nodded. Then I have a proposal for the council. The human fleet in the Orion sector currently consists of 3 battle groups. With the council's permission, we'd like to deploy them to assist the affected worlds. 3 battle groups? Kovacs scoffed. The Mrith have fielded forces 5 times that size. Yes, Chen agreed pleasantly. They have. Which is why I'd like to remind the council of the non-interference protocol that was enacted after the Krixtal conflict. Specifically, Section 7, Paragraph 3. The chairman quickly accessed the relevant document, his scales shifting to a pale blue as he read. Ah, yes. The section stating that in the event of human military engagement, all Allied forces are required to withdraw to a minimum safe distance of 2 light years? 2.5, Chen corrected gently. We've found that's generally sufficient to avoid collateral effects. The chamber had grown very, very quiet. Ambassador, the chairman said carefully, are you suggesting that 3 human battle groups are sufficient to handle this crisis? Very well, the chairman declared after a brief consultation with his advisors. The council accepts the human delegation's offer of assistance. All Allied forces will maintain the prescribed safety distance. And, Ambassador Chen? Yes, Chairman? Do try to leave some habitable planets this time. The reconstruction budget isn't what it used to be. Chen's smile widened just a fraction. Of course, Chairman. We'll be sure to remind the Mrith about that part of the history lesson, too. After all, it's important to be thorough in these educational matters. As the council session adjourned, Tekzir found themselves hurrying to catch up with Chen in the corridor. Ambassador, a moment? Of course. Chen paused, that same serene smile still in place. What can I help you with? The Mrith. They destroyed a human research station last week, didn't they? In the Orion sector? They did. Were there any children aboard? Chen's smile faded slightly. 3 families, 7 children total. Tixir felt their carapace grow cold. I see. And that is, are you planning to glass their worlds? Chen shook her head. No, Ambassador. As I said, that would be overkill. We're just going to educate them about why certain boundaries exist, why certain lines shouldn't be crossed, why certain species shouldn't be provoked. And then? And then, Chen said softly, we're going to help them rebuild. We're going to show them mercy. We're going to demonstrate why humanity's friendship is infinitely preferable to our enmity. She patted Tixir's arm gently. It's a lesson that tends to stick. As Chen walked away, Tixir couldn't help but think about their conversation from 3 cycles ago, about sleeping dogs and apex predators and the thin line between civilization and savagery, about how humans didn't go to war because they wanted to, but because they had to. The M'rith, Tixir realized, were about to learn the difference. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, 3 human battle groups began to move. The M'rith learned quickly. 3 days after the human battle groups entered their territory, the M'rith High Command sent their first request for diplomatic contact. 5 days after that, they signed their first surrender document. By the end of the 2nd week, the M'rith Empire had effectively ceased to exist as a military power. Not a single planet had been glassed. I don't understand, Tixir admitted, watching the holographic display of the after-action reports with Ambassador Chen. Your forces were outnumbered 5 to 1. How did you... We didn't target their ships, Chen explained, manipulating the display to show a complex network of supply lines and communication nodes. We targeted their logistics, their command and control, their ability to coordinate their forces. It's amazing how quickly an empire falls apart when its parts can't talk to each other. But surely they could have... Could have what? Rushed our positions? Tried to overwhelm us with superior numbers? Chen's smile had an edge to it. They tried. Once. Would you like to see that footage? Perhaps not. Wise choice. Chen collapsed the holographic display. The important thing is that they understood the message, particularly after we demonstrated our ability to shut down their neural networks. Tixir's antennae twitched violently. You can do that? The M'rith use cybernetic augmentation to enhance their natural abilities. Very impressive technology. Very sophisticated. Very vulnerable. Chen's voice remained pleasant, but there was something in her tone that made Tixir's carapace crawl. It's unfortunate that their entire military leadership experienced simultaneous system failures during their last attempted offensive. Most unfortunate indeed. That's horrifying. Is it? Chen raised an eyebrow. More horrifying than bombing civilian research stations? More horrifying than killing children? More horrifying than glassing 17 worlds? But you didn't glass any worlds this time. No, we didn't have to. The M'rith, for all their aggression, proved to be quick studies. They understood the implicit threat. Sometimes, Ambassador, the monster you can imagine is far more effective than the one you actually face. Tixir absorbed this in silence for a moment. And now, what happens to the M'rith? Chen's expression softened slightly. Now comes the part that really terrifies them. We help them rebuild. What? Oh yes, we've already dispatched humanitarian aid ships, medical teams, engineering corps. We're going to help them reconstruct their communication networks, civilian ones of course, help them restore their trade routes, re-establish diplomatic relations with their neighbors. But why, after what they did? Because that's the second part of the lesson, Chen explained. The first part is showing them what we're capable of. The second part is showing them what we choose to be capable of instead. And what's that? Being better than our worst impulses? Chen stood, straightening her uniform. The aid ships should be arriving within the hour. Would you like to accompany me to the coordination briefing? It's always interesting to watch a species try to reconcile their fear of us with their gratitude. Tixir found themselves nodding, following Chen out of the briefing room. As they walked, a thought occurred to them. Ambassador? Yes? The neural network shut down. You could have done that from the beginning, couldn't you? Before any battles were fought? Chen's pace didn't falter. Of course. Then why didn't you? Because sometimes the lesson needs to include a demonstration. A reminder that mercy isn't the same as weakness. Chen paused at an intersection, turning to face Tekzir fully. The Marith needed to understand that we didn't spare them because we couldn't destroy them. We spared them because we chose not to. To remind them of the monster you could be. To remind them of the monsters we choose not to be. Chen gestured toward the conference room where the coordination briefing would be held. Shall we? I believe the Marith delegation is already waiting. As they entered the room, Tekzir noticed something they hadn't seen before. The Marith representatives, with their cybernetic implants and warrior physiology, were trembling slightly. But not when they looked at the human soldiers guarding the room. No, they trembled when they looked at the human medical personnel, the aid coordinators, the reconstruction specialists. Because now they understood something that Tekzir had learned 3 cycles ago. The most terrifying thing about humans wasn't their capacity for destruction. It was their capacity for mercy. And as Ambassador Chen began outlining the comprehensive aid package that humanity would provide to their former enemies, Tekzir finally understood why humans apologized for winning wars. It wasn't an apology at all. It was a warning. 1 standard year later, Ambassador Tekzir found themselves once again sharing tea with Ambassador Chen. This time on the observation deck of the newly reconstructed Marith Central Station. Below them, the capital world of the former Marith Empire bustled with activity, its streets filled with beings from a dozen different species. Remarkable, Tekzir commented, watching a human medical team coordinate with their Marith counterparts at a newly established hospital. 1 year ago, they were trying to conquer the sector. Now they're hosting interspecies medical conferences. Amazing what a shift in perspective can accomplish, Chen replied, sipping her tea. The blend was Marith, a gesture of cultural exchange that would have been unthinkable months ago. Their cybernetic expertise, combined with our medical technology, has produced some fascinating breakthroughs in neural regeneration. Is that why you did it this way? Tekzir asked. You saw potential in their technology? Chen's laugh was genuine. Oh no. The medical advances are just a pleasant side effect. We did it this way because it was the most efficient path to lasting peace. Efficient? Tekzir's antennae twitched in confusion. You spent more on reconstruction than the entire military campaign cost. Precisely. Chen set down her cup and gestured toward the viewport. Look at that hospital down there. What do you see? Tekzir observed the building, noting the constant flow of people in and out. I see. Cooperation? Healing? You see former enemies working together to save lives. Chen corrected gently. You see Marith scientists who once designed weapons now developing medical treatments. You see a society that has fundamentally transformed itself not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. After you demonstrated what would happen if they didn't, Tekzir pointed out. After we showed them a better alternative, Chen countered. The Marith were warriors because they never saw a more appealing option. We didn't just defeat them, we showed them a different way to be strong. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the city below. Eventually Tekzir spoke again. The council is considering offering them associate membership. Already? Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. That's faster than expected. Is it? Their technological contributions to the medical field alone have been substantial. And their military expertise, now redirected toward defensive operations and emergency response, has proven invaluable in recent crisis situations. True, Chen smiled. Though I suspect their rapid rehabilitation has as much to do with fear as with merit. Oh? Think about it, Ambassador. Every time the Marith contribute to the galactic community, every time they cooperate instead of conquer, every time they choose to help rather than harm, what message does that send? Tekzir's antennae curled as understanding dawned. That humanity's way works. That the species capable of shutting down their entire neural network chose instead to help them enhance it. That the force that could have destroyed them instead made them stronger. Exactly. Chen's smile took on a familiar edge. Every Marith success story is also a reminder of how thoroughly we could have destroyed them. Every medical breakthrough they achieve with our help is a testament to what we chose not to do to their cybernetic systems. Every peaceful trading mission they complete is a reminder of how completely we could have stripped their empire away. That's rather manipulative, Ambassador. Is it? We didn't force them to become better. We simply showed them that they could be. Chen gestured to a group of Marith children playing with human and Centaurian youngsters in a park below. Their children will grow up knowing humanity not as the force that defeated their empire, but as the allies who helped them build something better from the ashes of defeat. And that's worth more than 17 glassed worlds? Infinitely more. Chen's voice softened. Because now, when the next aggressive species emerges from some unexplored corner of space, they won't just hear stories about humanity's capacity for destruction. They'll see living proof of what cooperation with us can achieve. A chime sounded, indicating the approach of another ship to the station. Through the viewport, they watched as a massive vessel dropped out of FTL, its hull bearing the distinctive markings of a human medical corps ship. Ah, right on schedule, Chen noted. The Neural Regeneration Project enters its second phase today. The Mirith insisted on broadcasting the proceedings to every world in the sector. More living proof, more reminders. Chen stood, smoothing her uniform. Now, shall we head to the ceremony? I believe you'll find the Mirith's adaptation of human medical protocols quite interesting. They've managed to improve efficiency by nearly 30%. As they walked to the medical center, Kazir noticed something that made their carapace tingle. The Mirith they passed didn't just bow respectfully to Chen. They smiled. Not out of fear, but out of genuine warmth. They had forgotten to be afraid, because humanity had taught them something far more powerful than fear. They had taught them hope. And as Kazir watched Chen congratulate a Mirith surgeon on their latest breakthrough, they realized that this, perhaps, was humanity's most terrifying weapon of all. The ability to turn enemies into friends so completely that they forgot they had ever been enemies at all. The monster that humanity could become was fearsome indeed, but the ally they chose to be was unstoppable. 5 years after the Mirith intervention, as historians had taken to calling it, Ambassador Tekazir attended the Galactic Council's Centennial Security Summit. The Grand Chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, including several that had been bitter enemies mere decades ago. At the center of it all, somewhat ironically, sat the human delegation. The statistics are quite remarkable, High Commissioner Valara was saying, her holographic form shimming slightly as she gestured to the displayed data. Interspecies conflicts have decreased by 73% since the implementation of the Human Mediation Protocol. Kazir noticed Ambassador Chen, now sporting a few more gray hairs but still maintaining that same serene smile, making notes on her datapad. They couldn't help but remember their first conversation about sleeping dogs and monsters all those years ago. Furthermore, Valara continued, voluntary participation in the Reconstruction and Development Initiative has increased by nearly 200%. Species that once devoted their resources to military expansion are now actively contributing to galactic infrastructure projects. And we're supposed to believe this is all because of humanity's influence? The question came from a newly admitted member species, their representative's bioluminescent patterns displaying skepticism. Chen finally looked up from her datapad. Not our influence, she corrected gently. Our example. The chamber grew quiet, as it always did when humanity spoke about matters of war and peace. Would you elaborate, Ambassador Chen? The council chairman requested, his scales shifting to an interested azure. Of course. Chen stood, her uniform now bearing the additional insignia of her role as Director of Interspecies Rehabilitation. The Mirith intervention proved something that many species had difficulty accepting, that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice not to. She gestured to the Mirith delegation, where their representatives sat proudly among their former adversaries. 5 years ago, the Mirith were considered an existential threat to galactic stability. Today, their medical technology has saved millions of lives across 12 species. Their reformed military now leads our joint disaster response forces. Their schools host students from former enemy worlds. Because you defeated them, the skeptical representative interjected. No, Chen smiled. Because we showed them a better way to be victorious. She turned to address the entire chamber. Every species here knows what humanity is capable of. You've all read the histories, seen the records, heard the stories. But what matters isn't what we can do. It's what we choose to do instead. Kazir watched as Chen walked to the center of the chamber, her voice carrying to every corner. We choose to build rather than destroy, to heal rather than harm, to lift up rather than cast down, not because we must, but because we can. And in doing so, we demonstrate that the most powerful force in the galaxy isn't weaponry, or technology, or even the capacity for violence. She paused, looking each delegation in the eye. It's the capacity for change. The chamber was absolutely silent. The human mediation protocol works, Chen continued, not because species fear what we'll do if they reject it, but because they've seen what they can become if they embrace it. The Mirith weren't the first to learn this lesson, nor will they be the last. but they are perhaps the most dramatic example of a truth we learned long ago on Earth. The only victory worth having is one that makes an enemy into a friend. She returned to her seat, but remained standing. We fear war not because we are afraid of it, but because of the monster it makes us. And we choose peace not because we are incapable of war, but because we know there are better ways to be strong. The chamber erupted in applause, a rare occurrence in Galactic Council proceedings. Tekazir noticed that the skeptical representative's bioluminescence had shifted to patterns indicating deep thought. Later at the reception, Tekazir found Chen standing by a viewport, watching ships from 100 worlds move peacefully through the space lanes. Quite a speech, they commented, joining her at the window. Did you like the part about making enemies into friends? Chen asked, smiling. I borrowed it from our first conversation. I noticed. Tekazir's antennae twitched in amusement, though you left out the part about glassing 17 worlds. Did I need to mention it? Chen raised an eyebrow. Everyone in that chamber knows the story, just as they know about the neural shutdown during the Mrith campaign, just as they know about every other capability we've demonstrated but chosen not to use. And that's why it works? This perpetual balance between what you could do and what you choose to do instead? Partially. Chen turned to face them fully. But more importantly, it works because we mean it. Every hospital we build, every world we help rebuild, every enemy we help transform. It's not just diplomacy. It's not just strategy. It's who we choose to be. She gestured to where the Mrith delegation was enthusiastically discussing medical protocols with representatives from 3 former enemy species. Look at them. Really look. Do you see former enemies, former conquerors? Or do you see doctors, scientists, peacekeepers? I see. Tekazir paused, considering. I see proof. Proof? Proof that the monster isn't inevitable, that there's always another choice. Chen's smile broadened. Now you understand, and so do they. She nodded toward the gathered delegations. Every species in this room knows exactly what humanity is capable of, and every species in this room has watched us consistently choose a different path. A more difficult path, Tekazir observed, but a better one. Chen straightened her uniform. Now, shall we join the others? I believe the Mrith are about to announce their new initiative for rehabilitating post-conflict worlds. Apparently, they've developed quite a passion for helping others rebuild. As they walked toward the gathering, Tekazir reflected on how much had changed since that first conversation about humanity's peculiar habit of apologizing for winning wars. They understood now that it had never been about apology at all. It had been about choice. And in teaching that lesson to the galaxy, humanity had achieved something far greater than any military victory. They had taught the monsters how to be heroes instead. The end.